Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James. I'm joined today by Derek Anderson and Tamika Jones. Today's episode will be focused on scary stories to tell in the dark. We're going to be discussing the books, we're going to discuss the movie, and then we'll jump into some discussion on early Halloween shopping and planning, because it's never too early to start talking about Halloween. But to kick things off, we're going to go back to scary stories and go back to my childhood, because I think, the Scary Stories movie, obviously a big box office success in its opening weekend. And on top of being a very fun movie, and we'll get into that a little bit more later, I think it also kind of had this built-in audience of people in their 30s and 40s who had great experiences or terrifying experiences with scary stories. I remember that, for me, this was something that I guess I kind of started with, if I remember correctly, I started with Goosebumps. And it was fun. I really enjoy the Goosebumps books, but they're kind of tame in comparison, right? And then we had a book fair that would show up at our school. I don't know if it was a monthly thing or a weekly thing, but I'd save up my lunch money so that I could buy a book. And I didn't buy Scary Stories. I bought In a Dark, Dark Room, which is another horror short story collection from Alvin Schwartz. And that kind of got me hooked on him, and then these anthology books. So thankfully they had that, and they had Scary Stories. I think all 3 volumes, or maybe only 2 had been out at the time. And but anyway, I started with In a Dark, Dark Room. And the one that comes to mind right away is The Green Ribbon. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. But they did such a great job, even in this one, even though it was Dirk Zimmer doing the artwork here, not Stephen Gammell. Alvin Schwartz had a unique gift of being able to tell these terrifying stories in a way that was still accessible to children, and then combine it with this surreal artwork, which was unsettling without being too graphic. And I think, like I said, we kind of see that in A Dark, Dark Room, and then I think that gets perfected in Scary Stories. So these were really, game changers for me. Before I was reading Stephen King, I was reading Alvin Schwartz. And so like I said, I have very fond memories of these. We'll talk about some more of the stories later, but like I said, some of them are burned into my brain, and so I want to talk about them in a little bit. But Derek, how about you? What was your experience like growing up? Was Scary Stories big for you? Was it Goosebumps?
I was more of the Goosebumps guy growing up, for sure, just because I think it was more accessible to me, and there were many of them compared to Scary Stories, which you just had the 3 volumes. All of those volumes were out already when I was a kid, so I mean they could have been around, but I just either never noticed them, or maybe they were secretly banned or in a secret red room in the library that I just didn't know about. So I was definitely more of the Goosebumps kid. And then they had the TV series, so it's just this whole awareness of it. And Goosebumps, I think, was at its biggest in the mid 90s, so it was this perfect storm of Goosebumps mania at the time. And I did branch off into other like creepy stories, like Hardy Boys had some supernatural stuff going on, and I'd read Choose Your Own Adventures and things like that. I would eventually get into Fear Street and Christopher Pike, but it was not until later when I read Scary Stories. But I do remember seeing Stephen Gammell's illustrations and being really freaked out by them, because they almost had this like twisted take on where the sidewalk ends, kind of like the black and white just always made me think of that. So it took something that was kind of familiar and really twisted it for me. So I definitely didn't get into it when I was a kid as much, but it was later on when I did finally start to read them, and never forgot them after that either.
And then Tamika, how about you?
I agree with Derek. When you read like a scary story and it really gets into your mind, you never forget that at all. And what led me to Scary Stories was Goosebumps. Because again, it's perfect. They're geared towards middle school age, I would say. Young adults, well, not even young adults, younger than that. And again, there's, yeah, like Derek said, there's so many of them, and Stine, it's just, it just seems like when you're at that age, he just seems like a god to you. And so every book that comes out, you read it, and then as you age, you move on to different stories, different material that I think suits where you are at that point in your life. And that's where I found scary stories. I really only remember 1.5 stories. I remember, since we've been discussing Goosebumps and other scary stories we read as children, I remember I think it's called The Red Spot.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, because I have a thing about spiders, and that story just sent me into a place where I regret ever reading that story. And again, the illustrations are so cool and just so, in their own way, kind of grim and graphic. And I'll never forget just this like ginormous, I guess, it's not even a pimple, but like it's just this huge spider bite on the girl's cheek, and this like thing coming out of it. And I'm sweating just thinking about just talking about this right now. Actually, I apologize. I'm getting hot. I remember that story, and I remember, I could be wrong, but I think it's called Dream or The Dream. But that one really stuck in my mind as well. And a really good friend of mine at the time, was just like 8th grade. She, I lent her, there's only one copy in the library, and I remember letting her read it, and yeah, she was just as equally freaked out as me. so I know I'm not alone. But yeah, and then I graduated to Fear Street. So by then I was in high school, so those books were a little more mature, I think. Although Scary Stories is, I don't even know why I just said that, because I think those stories are a little too mature for our age group at the time. But yeah, I wish that I had read more of them.
Well, it's interesting that you bring it up, that it's too mature, because obviously something they touched upon, quite a bit in the Scary Stories documentary. And Derek, you kind of alluded to it, is that like these books were considered taboo, where, R.L. Stine, and he still got his share of upset parents, especially with the Fear Street books, but a little bit with Goosebumps as well, and kind of leading people to the path of Satan. The Scary Stories books were just outright banned. I remember, like I said, it was part of our book fair. We had access to it. Everybody was reading it. There was like a wave when the first 2 books came out. And then you could rent them, get them at the library as well. And we had a library at our school where they were, if you didn't own a copy. But after that, they disappeared. And it also, you weren't even allowed to have them in school. It got so bad. I went to a Catholic grade school. So like these were, it went from, like I said, something that you saw all around the place and kids had access to like things that you'd get detention if you were caught reading, which is crazy to think about. Back then you're younger, and I guess the interesting thing about that is that didn't stop us from reading it, didn't stop us from keeping it in our backpack. Like it sucks for the younger generation. The people that, maybe were a few years younger than me, that they got impacted and they weren't able to buy the book at the book fair. That sucks. But for us who already owned our copies, there was like something like taboo about having these like banned books and, kind of sharing or trading them with each other, because maybe, I had volume 1, but they didn't have, they didn't have 2, or maybe I had it in a dark room and we'd trade them. So we'd often, share and stuff like that. But anyway, it was like, ooh, like we shouldn't have these. So that was a real thing. And like I said, unfortunate, but like I said, I think it also kind of propelled the popularity, because when you tell somebody don't have something, like this is banned, then people are like, oh, I got to check this out, whether you're a kid or an adult. And then,
right.
I think it's interesting, that Tamika, you talked about, like, there's that one story, and I think it's kind of that way for everybody, where it's not that, if it's, it might be multiple stories, but there are those stories that are burned in people's head. Like, like the red spot that you mentioned, like that's something that frequently would pop in my mind or come up in conversation, not even related to the movie. It would just be like, oh, like you got a big spider bite, like a bunch of little baby spiders are going to come out. Like that just frequently is something that I would say. And then there's that one called High Beams. I don't know if either of you read that story or remember it, but it's where the woman is like, the truck's flashing its high beams at her, and she thinks that they're going to kill her. And really what's happening is there's like that killer behind her about to stab her in the car. And he's flashing his lights so that like the killer won't end up actually going after her. Yeah,
that's
right?
a classic urban legend too.
Exactly. And so like that one, like that stuck in my head a long time. Like, again, I read that when I was in grade school, and I still thought about it, but I mean, I didn't drive at the time, but when I started driving, that came to mind. Like if a car behind me would flash its lights, I'm like, I wonder if somebody's trying to kill me. Like that would, that is the impact that these stories had. And it's really incredible to think about that, how much they influenced, inspired, terrified, whatever you want to call it, but a major portion of America's and the world's youth.
It's like family-friendly graphic content too, because the way Stephen drew those illustrations from a distance, you would think, oh, it's another children's book with these charming kind of old-fashioned style drawings. But the closer you get, you realize how demented they really are. And I think that's the brilliance of it. And then the way that you mentioned Alvin retells these, in some cases, hundreds of years old stories, and makes them accessible to an entire generation, was just a 1-2 punch. And I think it was obviously, maybe it took a while for people to kind of realize just what maybe their kids were getting into, but luckily enough got in circulation where it's stuck, because I think it really stands the test of time. And it's important to have these folklore stories live on in a modern generation as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say he's doing the devil's work, keeping these going, basically. but
the red spot for me, though, is I think probably the most disturbing, just because I also have a little fear of spiders, and then acne is something that we can all relate to at some point in our lives. And then you take something that is that common experience, and then you make it your worst fear imaginable, and it just really hits home. So. But the Hearst song is another one, just because it's so descriptive, and it's like this twisted children's nursery rhyme about what happens when you die and what the worms are going to do to you and how you're going to get eaten in the dirt. And all these stories are just so palpable. And a lot of times they put you in the situation as well, which is even more disturbing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like It's so interesting how if you take little innocent seeming fears that we all have and kind of blow them up, out of proportion, how scary that is. Because I bought this sponge that's supposed to have like collagen infused into it or something. You're supposed to like rub it on your face at night. And I am so terrified of like spiders, like, I don't know, like somehow making their way into like the sponge and living in it, that like I won't even use the sponge now, because I'm just terrified that I'm gonna like rub it on my face and then like spiders will like hatch or something and then like pop out of my face or something. I think that's from just reading far too many stories, like scary stories to tell in the dark.
But these fears are also real. Like this kind of stuff can really happen. I shake my towel every time because when I get out of the shower, because like 5 years ago, I picked up a towel. There was a spider in it. And I start like drying my face, and the spider starts crawling on my face. And like ever since then, And it's not like, I mean, I used to be more worried about spiders, and there's a story about how I got over that, which I guess I'll tell in a minute, but they don't really bother me as much. But then, you know, I'm like, okay, well, the towel's been sitting there for a little bit. Like, I already know one spider got, you know, stayed in the towel. So like, I shake my towel out every time now.
Yeah, that happened to me once too, where there was a spider on the towel. I didn't put my face to it, so at least I avoided that, but
it left the towel and it was just on my face. It wasn't even like I touched it. Yeah.
Oh God.
But yeah, I used to not like spiders all that much. And I might have even said this one on the podcast before, but I had a bunk bed and the bottom bed turned into a sofa in my bedroom at my parents' place. So frequently I'd sit there and I'd watch movies, and I have my bowl of popcorn. It's dark. I'm watching TV. And so there's just that flicker, and all of a sudden I see like a little like spider, you know, go in front of me, and I'm like, baby spider, and I like kill it, and I'm like, okay. And then I see another one like drop down in front of my face. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And then I like look around, and I realize that like a spider sack had like opened over my head, and, like baby spiders all over me. It's like in my popcorn, like hundreds of spiders. So like instead of terrifying me, it sounded like you must throw up, Derek. So instead of like traumatizing me, it actually had the opposite effect. I'm like, well, if I can deal with like hundreds of spiders on me at the same time, like this one spider isn't that bad. But I still shake the towel. So anyway,
I hope you check the popcorn too.
Well, I stopped eating the popcorn after that, but I'm just like, yeah, I took a shower, and yeah, I had baby spiders all over me, and they were on the sofa. And then I knew when I went to sleep, I didn't get them all. So.
Oh my God.
And you still slept there?
I did. Yep. It was. I don't know what happened. Yeah, but I did.
Wow.
I guess I just prayed for the best.
Sounds like a saw trap.
Yeah. No, it was bad. But yeah, so I mean, that's, you know, that's what these books do. These stories kind of tap into some of those primal fears, whether it's a fear of spiders or a fear of, you know, being by yourself, or claustrophobia or death, or whatever the case. You know, there's so many stories here, which is a thing too, because he keeps them brief and to the point. He just fits so many in that he gets to cover a lot of cool legends. And then as I recall, he also had like a source or like a bibliography, so that he listed what kind of research he did, or where the original urban legend originated from.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was cool. And honestly, I don't remember a lot of them, to be perfectly honest. But I do remember reading that and enjoying that part of the books as well. So like, it gave some of the backstory.
Yeah, actually, my sister and brother-in-law got me a new set of scary stories that HarperCollins released within the last couple of years with the original illustrations, because I know there had been another new version that had altered illustrations, that was forbidden, of course, because you can't change that magic. So, but yeah, I was actually just looking through those as you were talking about that, and there's just pages of references and further reading that you can do on your own, and just go down the rabbit hole and then do your own library research montage. So that's really, really cool, because he, like you said, it could have been easy for him to just say, well, I got it from the general consciousness of history. But the fact that there are all of these references, and they're so diverse too, like there's articles, there's books, there's encyclopedias, it's everything. So that's really amazing.
Yeah, that is really cool. And I think that regardless of whether or not you like the movie, what I really enjoy about scary stories, and there being a movie about it now, is all the extra publicity that's kind of brought scary stories back to the public consciousness. So that, again, no matter if you saw the movie, no matter what you thought about the movie, like people who enjoyed the book, like they might, you know, reread it, or they might buy it for their kids. Or, you know, kids at school may be like, hey, I see this Scary Stories trailer, or I really like the movie, and now I'm going to read the book. So I think it's cool that that's kind of, like I said, been brought back, and hopefully a lot more people are going to be reading these books.
Yeah, you know, Creepypastas were really popular for quite a while. I would say even just as early as, recent as a few years ago. And you just see them everywhere, and they would just pop up on, line. And then we got a great TV show. I know some creepypastas. But then I noticed it kind of died down. And so I hope that's true. I hope that this revitalizes the, telling scary stories, getting together. I hope that that's what kids do. Like, I don't know if kids have slumber parties anymore, but it would be really cool if they still do. Like, they, sit around and tell scary stories and like freak each other out, and stay up all night. That would be awesome. I'd be very, very stoked if that happened.
Yeah. You go ahead, Derek.
Oh, just a lot of these stories are meant to be read aloud, and I know that's what Alvin intended. So yeah, they're perfect for sleepovers.
And like you said, Derek, they reprinted all of them, so you may have to hunt on eBay for the originals, but otherwise, I think you can get the all three of them together, or maybe they have them individually, but with the original art restored, and I'm sure they're on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and everywhere else, or Barnes and Noble. So let's talk a little bit about Scary Stories, the movie. Let's talk a lot about it. So obviously, like I said, this was a big box office success already. Had a great opening weekend, great marketing campaign that kind of tied into that nostalgia and tied into the love that everyone had for the books. But I think it also was able to deliver on some of that. But I will hold back on my full impressions. And Derek, we'll start with you. What did you think of the movie?
Oh, I absolutely adored it. I think it nailed the atmosphere of the books. It brought Gammell's illustrations to life and did them justice. And it was a family-friendly horror movie that wasn't afraid to get really dark when it needed to. It felt like the stakes were real. And I think Heather Wixson mentioned that in her review, that this was something where it felt like there were real consequences. And I think it just really worked well. I thought the atmosphere of citing it in 1968 was great. So overall, I had a blast with it, and I really couldn't have asked for more from it. I think it really satisfied me in a lot of ways and checked a lot of boxes down the board, just story-wise, makeup-wise, directorial. I mean, everything about it I really enjoyed.
And Tamika, what about you?
Okay. So I would say that 13-year-old me really loved the movie. But 30-something year-old me was a little underwhelmed. But I do really enjoy the direction, and I really enjoyed the cinematography and the overall aesthetic of the film. And I think, like Derek said, I think it captured the illustrations very well, especially the Scarecrow. And I'm not entirely sure what her name is, but the pale lady, the creatures, the jangly man, like the creatures were done very, very well. So I feel like my younger self loved it. My not so younger self sort of, okay. It was okay.
And I have a Derek edit as per usual, and that was Meghan Navarro's review and not Heather's. So
okay.
Sponsored by Derek.
I was also going to mention something about Meghan's review, because she refers to this as gateway horror, and that is a topic that popped up online when discussing the film. And I think there was, I don't know, I would say I don't think there was a misconception in terms of what Scary Stories would be. I think that maybe there was some confusion or some hopes from people that because of the people involved, that maybe we'd be getting a like hard-hitting R-rated version of this. I would say that I thought that was pretty unrealistic. is that in keeping with what the tradition of the book and the spirit of the book, that it was always going to be a movie geared towards kids. And when Meghan and when others refer to, to gateway horror, I mean, they're talking about, and that's what I think this is, a perfect horror movie for a young horror fan who is either just getting into horror or maybe who doesn't even necessarily like them, and their friends drag them, to go see the movie, and they're like, wow, I really like that. And like, let me read the book. Let me watch other horror movies. Like this is a great movie. Like I said, there's a gateway into the horror genre. And I think that this movie, unlike, and I really enjoyed Goosebumps as well. I know not everybody enjoyed it. That's straight a kid's movie, but I enjoyed it. And but I thought Scary Stories definitely had a little bit of a, I don't know if it's a mean streak. There definitely was a little more of a darkness to it that, again, I still think was in the same spirit of the original books. When we see Harold and he takes when we are going to be doing spoilers, when he takes the, this is a quick spoiler warning, when he takes the pitchfork and he runs it through that kid. I mean, I didn't expect them to get away with that in a PG-13 movie, because we saw Annabelle Comes Home and that got an R rating. Like, and I actually think Annabelle Comes Home was more tame than what we got here for Scary Stories. So
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. But
which isn't a bad thing. It's just, the two different tones. And it's funny that Annabelle did get the R rating. Yeah.
I mean, I think both movies are great for kids. But unfortunately, kids, unless you sneak in, can't buy a ticket for Annabelle Comes Home. So, yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think if there's anything really that I would have changed or that I disliked. I mean, we could have maybe changed some stories around. I think for the Jangly Man, I think some of the CG was a little overkill. I know that they have some wonderful practical effects and they maintain those for the most part. But I think the Jangly Man, when we first see him, see his face, and when he's coming together, that was a little more CG than I'd like. But I mean, I think that was probably more my biggest complaint than anything. I had a lot of fun with the kids. I thought the cast was great, and yeah, just through and through. As like I said, as a fan of the books, it was kind of nice to see these come to life.
Yeah, it was really. It's amazing too that they have Troy James and Javier Botet both in this movie, and they're two of the top contortionists working today. So I think Javier did the Big Toe corpse, and then Twisty Troy James did the Jangly Man. So I really like that they got both of them involved. And the Jangly Man, to me, I do agree, there probably was a little more CG maybe than they needed, but I loved the movement of the character. It felt like Pennywise mixed with The Exorcist, like Linda Blair going down the stairs in The Exorcist. It just really worked for me, and I love that they actually took him out onto the street and used him a lot more than I expected. So that was fun. But I enjoyed, and this is something that maybe diehard fans of the books might not enjoy, but I enjoyed how they interwove a lot of the stories into the narrative, and found ways to touch on some of these stories and tell them in different ways that made sense for the overall story in the movie. And if you treat the books as a Bible and you don't want a word changed, then that might not go so well for you. And there's even someone I overheard at the theater when I was leaving, they were talking about the books were just so much creepier and the stories were like a lot better and that kind of thing, which I totally get that they work really well as short stories, but when you try to bring them into this overall narrative, it's like, well, how do you do that if you're not going to do an anthology film? And I think they found a really good way to do that. From a screenwriting standpoint and from a director's standpoint, I think they found a way to bring a lot of these stories in and give them a little slightly new spin and then just make it work. And I think it overall worked. So it's kind of like when they did Goosebumps. Like, I would love to see just a Goosebumps movie on like Welcome to Dead House and not every monster in the Goosebumps universe, but I understand why they did it, and I think it works. Like, it works to do the Jumanji style when you're making a movie geared towards a younger audience. So it's I think it really worked well for me with Scary Stories, maybe because I grew up more with Goosebumps, and I'm less married to I'm less married to the way they are written in the books, and I'm more willing to be flexible with them. So that could just be me, but I think overall it worked from a story standpoint too.
It's one of those things though where, at least for Goosebumps, like there's a lot of material there to work with. I mean, it's a full book per story. So I can imagine having more complaints with that. There's not a lot of material to work with in Scary Stories. It's just not the way they're written. So they had to figure out a way to, and everybody has different stories, right? I mean, everybody, it's whether it's, the Red Spot or Harold, or like I said, I didn't get High Beam, so I'm upset about that. But like everybody has a favorite. I know, right? Everybody has a favorite. So I think they were able to put in as many stories as they could. And then also, I think they had some really interesting characters here. I like the choices that they made with Stella, Ramon, Augie, Chuck, and it felt like we are quickly introduced to them. It's nice that it takes place kind of over and after Halloween. But like I said, it kind of feels very organic. I think the character of Chuck is really funny and kind of a standout there. But I also like that this feels a little bit, even though it takes place in the past, it feels a little bit more modern in that I really like where they go with the Stella character. And Stella's not just backup here. She is the hero. And whereas you might think it would be, I mean, honestly, in if this movie were 20 years ago, it'd probably be Augie. And so I like that. I would say in terms of the characters, I'm surprised that they didn't use Dean Norris as much.
Oh, I know, right?
As Stella's dad. I thought that was kind of a bit of a waste, but I understand at the same time, like, you have all this momentum with the kids. Maybe you don't want to bring him into it, but at the same time, it's like, oh, it's like with Aubrey Plaza in Child's Play. It's like, well, you have this, great actress. Like, why are you not going to use her as much? But,
and he's playing a good guy too, which is a little against type for him.
Yeah.
I always just remember him as Big Jim from Under the Dome, so I was just happy to see him again.
I ejected that show a few episodes in. I'm sorry, or maybe I'm not.
Okay, I understand. It almost became like a character of itself by the end, just because it went through so many like crazy plot developments. But it was such a fun summer show. Like, let's see what happens this week, and they killed off so many characters. It was a totally different show by the end, but I kind of loved it for that reason. So
yeah, I'm really just messing with you. There's so many shows I can't keep up with them. I want to. If I had the time, I'd watch it. I'd finish it. Supernatural. I knew we'd bring Supernatural into this, Tamika. See, there we go. But it's not going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you though. I think I really liked the casting, and I think each character had more than enough to do. And I like that we even got to see a little bit of Tommy's home life instead of just making him this like over the top douchebag bully, which, he is, but we get to see like, oh, okay, he's maybe doesn't have the best home life and wants to go to Vietnam. So what is that like for him? So there's some really interesting dynamics there. And I thought Chuck was great. I love how he brought so much comic relief to the role, and just his dynamic with his sister Ruthie was so good too. I was laughing out loud at pretty much all of their scenes together. So I really liked it. Yeah. And I thought Zoe as Stella was great, and Ramon was really well played by Michael as Garza. So it was a really cool cast, and they did some unexpected things with them. Like certain people dropped out of the narrative sooner than I expected, and others stuck around longer. So I think it kept you on your toes and really kept things interesting. That it never really felt like anyone was particularly safe. So I thought that was really cool how they played the characters and how the characters were handled.
And also, Tamika, you go ahead.
Sorry. After I hear you guys' points, I feel suddenly swayed in my thoughts, my adult me's thoughts about this movie.
We're having a mom moment.
No, dude, we cannot discuss mom. It's a sore spot for me. No. I'm trying to think. Why did my 13-year-old self love this movie, but my adult self did not? And the more I hear you guys talk about the movie and the characters and the kids and like the really mature choices that were made, not to hold any punches and kind of kill off people. And, that's certainly unexpected, in a PG-13 horror film. And yeah, I've been swayed. I feel my adult self slowly coming around. It feels good.
It's happening.
It's happening. It's all happening. Because when I think about the chase, again, I'm from a small town, and scarecrows and just miles of fields and haystacks and scarecrows. It took me back
and Blair Witch symbols,
and I remember that scene, the series of scenes being really effective for me. And that was one of the many moments in the film where I started to get really overwhelmed and I felt tense. And I did not, we already said we were doing semi-spoilers, right?
Yeah, well, spoiler warning again. Go ahead.
Okay. And I did not expect a death. I think then he turns into the Scarecrow. That
was intense. And they showed they did the close-ups on his face as he's like vomiting straw. That's traumatizing.
Yeah. That's really great stuff. And the thing is, I didn't expect the safe way would have been to bring them all back at the end. Yes, I assumed that they were that she was gonna make some changes, and then she was gonna break the curse, and then everybody was gonna show back up again. Nope. Obviously, they kind of set that stuff up for a sequel, but you don't always know that a sequel is gonna happen. So if you just take this for one and done, those kids are dead.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious how they would go about doing that. So I really do want a sequel just to see what that would look like, because it looks like they're moving on from the Sara Bellows storyline to some extent.
It looked like she had other books, though. Back when they grabbed the first book, there were others. So I'm assuming that that was Scary, even though these are from different books. I'm assuming that was Scary Stories Volume 1, and the other books are how they make this work. But maybe they have something different. But
a Reader's Digest or something.
But yeah,
1960s.
It looks like there were other books in there.
Well, I love how they use that as the wraparound segment of sorts, like the Sara Bellows book, and you can't stop the stories from writing themselves. It almost felt like a Final Destination plot line where it keeps going down the line and no one who is in the house of Sara Bellows is safe. So once someone essentially dies or is pulled into their own story, it goes to the next person. But if that person can survive, it skips them. So it felt a lot like Final Destination in the 60s, which I just absolutely loved with these teenagers. It just really felt like a fun way to incorporate these stories and then also give some meaning to where these stories came from in the first place with the Sara Bellows character. And I know it's funny too, because Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton, who are they're writing a new Final Destination movie, they kind of did one of the initial pitches for this movie before Guillermo came on. So it's this weird full circle effect for the story. But I just absolutely loved how they used that to bring these stories in and make it make sense. We just need Tony Todd to explain it all.
I think by far my favorite scene, I don't know. I think I was this movie's good so far, and I'm enjoying this. I think the Herald part really got me. I'm wow, they're really going for it, like I had mentioned. And then kind of what solidified it for me was the Pale Lady. I think that scene is expertly executed. Obviously, it's a great story, but I actually think this is one case where it is scarier in the movie than it is in the story. It almost felt reminiscent of something that you'd get out of Japanese horror, where it's like this inescapable terror. Some of the other stories were interesting because you might have been able to get away from Harold. You could maybe escape the spiders. They obviously ran from the jangly man for a while. So like it is possible to get away from some of these things. Not the Pale Lady. Like you knew that Chuck had like, a minute to survive because every time he turned, she was there. In some cases you could see her twice. Like he was done. And I thought that was incredibly creepy.
It was kind of the movie's it follows moment. And I guess that goes for the Jangly Man too, because as long as you stay ahead of them, you'll be okay. But yeah, that was so much fun. I love how they did point of view shots from Chuck's point of view and just like really put you in those hallways with him. And I think that was one of like I remember during the Super Bowl, they released all those little commercials for this movie, which is crazy because it feels like that was just yesterday. And here we are, the movie's out already. But I think they like teased the Pale Lady and they did the spiders and everything like that. So the Pale Lady did not disappoint. I love how they did it. And then also like what the makeup effects team did with her is just outstanding.
And there were some people in the theater who, when she first showed up, they laughed because I think they first show her and it's real close up and it's in the full light. It's not that red light yet. And so I remember hearing some people like giggling. And then everybody shut up for the rest of the scene, and so I mean that's when you know it's a good scene or it's a good movie because it's that silence, especially on opening night. You have a lot of kids there, especially during the summer. Like a lot of movies get ruined by kids just being like, oh well, I'm just gonna laugh through it even if I'm really scared, or this movie's stupid. And like I said, you get them when just everyone's silent, and this is one of those scenes.
That's so true. That it gave me like a, not quite Samara, but it gave me kind of that feeling, just like inescapable, not just unwielding, like she's not going to get tired. She's not going to stop, like you're done. So yeah, that it started off kind of like, okay, where is this going? And then, by the end of that, I just thought, yes, this is what I needed. Yes.
We're winning you over, Tamika.
It's happening.
It is.
It is creepy. It's like all she wants to do is give him a hug. And it's so slow and methodical that it's you almost think like, oh, no big deal. But then, like you said, there is no escape. And I love just that. I feel like that. In that case, they really let the practical effects shine. And I know Spectral Motion worked on the movie, and Mike Hill and Norman Cabrera. Like they definitely, with Guillermo on board, that they're going to bring in practical effects. And I feel like that was the perfect mix of practical. And if they did do a little CG, it just really was seamless, just as seamless as the character was made.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, like I said, except for the intro to the Jangly Man, I think, all movies, it's interesting because, people will say like, oh, I hate CG, but CG is used everywhere seamlessly these days, or in a lot of places, and you don't even know. It may just be used in cleaning up wires. It may be changing the background, adding some scenery, or basically building upon sets, or it might be to just touch up effects just a little bit, so you don't know. And yeah, I think, like I said, most of these were expertly done.
Jonathan, since you're more well-versed with the books, is there a Sara Bellows like mentioned anywhere in any of the other stories? Like any of the...
That's a really good question. I am not positive, to be honest. There may be a story where they kind of pulled it, but I don't think so. I think it was new and more kind of used as a wrapper. That said, there is like the Diary of Sara Bellows book that they just released, which is kind of like a companion book to the movie, and it has like I think it's behind the scenes details and information on the story. I actually just got the book before we started recording, and I have to take a look at it. But yeah, I think that's unique to this movie.
Okay, because saying it over and over now, it makes me think of Sara Bellows, and I don't know, like that just if that was done on purpose, if the writers made her name Sara Bellows like on purpose so that it kind of makes you feel like, I don't know, like you're in your, like keep you in your own mind, or maybe make you focus on maybe your own imagination or the thoughts going on in your mind. That is so cool. Again, I don't know if that's true. That's why I asked. I was just curious, like, is she a real character? Because it sounds like, I don't know, it just reminds me of Sara Bellows for some reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. It might be intentional.
If that's intentional, that is so cool. Oh my God.
So I think we completely won you over on this one, Tamika. This isn't even like Ma, because I feel like you're a convert. Okay,
it's true. I have converted.
Yeah, for Ma, the two of you need to watch it again, and then we need to get Scott in here.
Oh God.
That would be fun to do, like a revisit series and kind of see if our minds are swayed on a second viewing.
Yeah, we should do that. For anybody who didn't catch our Ma episode, I suggest checking it out. But I really enjoyed it. Derek and Tamika, not as much. But as I've said, I think I've said it in recent podcasts, we ended up talking afterwards for like an extra like hour and a half about Ma. And I think I at least convinced Tamika that it's a better movie than she thought it was. Derek, I think you're still on the fence. But this is why we have second viewings.
I'm waiting for the unrated director's cut, like, because in this case, I think it would really benefit from it. And I don't think it works for every movie, but I think it works. Sometimes it like changes a movie completely. So I would love to see if they do that.
It's like Blade Runner. And now that we've ventured completely out of scary stories, we're going to move into discussing Halloween, because we love Halloween. Try to celebrate Halloween basically every year, every day. But, it's kind of like, like the Christmas season or the holiday season, I should say. And, I feel like that starts around Thanksgiving, depending on when Thanksgiving is. You could have like basically like the holiday last from, middle of November, and then you got, January, you got New Year. So basically till like January 2nd. So that's like, a month and a half of like holiday spirit. But for Halloween, it used to be, I guess, closer to October 31st, and now it's been moving back a little bit more. So then it was like all of October we would be able to like buy stuff, and they had, TV programming and whatnot geared towards Halloween. And I was like, hey, well, we're seeing a little bit of this in September. And now it feels like, Halloween officially starts in August, or Halloween season, I should say. And so for me, it's been very exciting to see this happen. There is as much as I wish it was coming from the fact that all the stores just love Halloween, there is a consumerism factor to it, that they want to start getting Halloween things as early as possible. But I'm not going to complain when places like Spirit Halloween open up in I think that some of them opened up August 1st. So anyway,
some of them.
It's been pretty cool. Oh, interesting. That sounds like there's a story there. So my Spirit Halloween opened, like I said, I think around, well, it wasn't my Spirit Halloween either. So I guess this is where we're starting. My Spirit Halloween is not opening this year for whatever reason, because they usually try to, go in a strip mall where there's an empty space. And so I'm assuming that there were no like reasonable empty spaces for them to rent. But like for the last like 10 years or however long Spirit's been around, 15 years, it's been in one little area about 5 to 10 minutes away from where I live. And now it's 40 minutes away. So when I realized that my Spirit wasn't opening, then I took the trip, yesterday, a couple days ago. About 40 minutes away, so I could check out Spirit Halloween. And I mean, and every year they don't disappoint. I always find that they have something, cool for me to pick up. This year it was their life-size Sam props from Trick or Treat. Derek, you know how excited I was because I texted you as soon as I got out of Spirit Halloween, and I'm like, oh my God, I got a life-size Sam, and it was only $48. And
with a coupon, right?
With a coupon, yes. Otherwise, it's $60. But like,
still
I guess
a bargain, though.
It is. So they have a life-size Sam animatronic, and that moves, and I think it has the removable mask. And I mean, that one's fine, but I think that one's more like 160 or 200. But then they have another one that is just like a bust. It's meant to like kind of like hang on a hook. But if you remove the hook, like it could just sit like a bust. And so he's got his hands, and he's got his mask on. And so, like I said, there's just that black string you get rid of, and basically you have a life-size Sam bust in your house, and it's only $48, or at least mine was. So they've been selling out everywhere, and apparently I lucked out because when I went to cash out, the woman who cashed me out, she was talking to my wife and I, and she's like, that was the last one we had. Like, we sold out on the other ones like a couple weeks ago, but like this was in a box and we found it. And like somebody was asking me if we had them earlier, and I'm like, no. And then or earlier in that day. And she said no. And then she found it and put it out, and then I showed up.
That sounds a little like Child's Play or Jingle All the Way. Like, it sounds like a Chucky or Turbo Man doll, so I'd be careful with that.
I didn't think about this, but Sam has no legs. It doesn't, but he has arms. So, I mean, he can just kind of like crawl up my stairs, and I think I hear it right now. Oh no.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So if I abruptly am pulled away, you know what happened. But you know what?
Unless
it's not going to happen.
Also got like a bust of Brian Cox with a shotgun, then you might be okay.
I should be okay though, because I celebrate the Halloween spirit every minute of every day. Yeah. So I think if anything, he's happy with me. I should be fine. He may drag other bodies to my house. That'll be a problem over time. But yeah, I think I'm good. So yeah, so they had that. That was my first pickup. They also have Creepyco t-shirts. So I lucked out, and they had a Creepyco t-shirt.
Oh my gosh.
A Halloween one.
Really?
And so I picked that up, and then
like in the store, they just have Creepyco shirts.
Yeah, they do. So yeah, so
that's amazing.
Cool. Yeah. So that was an unexpected surprise. And then I'm trying to think what else I saw. I didn't pick up some of these other things, but they had a Jason Voorhees mask coffee mug, and they had all new Hocus Pocus Funkos. And
nice.
I'm trying to think what else they had. They had a bunch of animatronics, but our theme, we usually do a horror theme, and maybe this is probably why Sam's going to kill me. We usually do a horror theme for our Halloween party. We have a yearly Halloween party, but we've done so many horror themes, and last year's party went so well that I'm like, I don't know what to do next. So I'm like, well, let's try a different theme. So we're doing superheroes this year. I'm like, we're gonna change things up, and we're gonna do a superhero theme. Everybody can dress as superheroes, and we're gonna change our decorations around. So I'm not getting a lot of Halloween decorations that are new this year. That being said, I always have Halloween decorations up year round, so it's not like they're going away. But anyway,
are you doing Marvel Zombies superheroes, or is it going to be more non-horror?
You know what? That's a good point, because I was thinking originally about like the original things that came to mind were non-horror, but then as I've been thinking about it, I'm bringing more horror into it. So yeah. There will be some, but yeah, my plans are still TBD as I figure out how we're going to dress up different rooms and stuff like that. But yeah, it should be a good time. But anyway, I digress. And Spirit Halloween has all new animatronics. They have a lot of creepy clowns. I'm trying to think what else I saw. They have somebody trapped in a spider web, and he hung upside down. There's little spiders on him. This is very relevant to our earlier conversation. And then he like kind of screams and like withers around. So I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, it was definitely a worthwhile trip. So it sounds like I already know that it sounds like you had some problems with your Spirit Halloween, Derek. So I'll get back to you in a minute. Tamika, I know you were going to check out Spirit this week. How did that go?
Okay. So my local spirit has been contaminated by a Christmas store.
Oh no.
Yes, I this is what I hate, right? Okay. I feel like Christmas always infringes on all the other holidays. And now it's starting to infringe on Halloween. And so now my local spirit is split in half. Like the left side is spirit, and then the right side is called Christmas Cabaret.
Oh.
And there's like a Santa outside, like those inflatable things that you see at like car dealerships, you know, that like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like that, but it's a Santa, and it like blows around or whatever. I tried to take a picture of it the other day, and but like I can't ever get a good crisp shot of it, so you can see the blasphemy. But I'm really excited. Whenever Spirit pops up, like that's when you know, oh, Halloween is upon us. And when you go in and there's a line, that makes me happy. There was a good like 20 people in there, and they were already sold out of some things, which I thought was interesting. No Sam, no life-size Sams, so maybe those were already sold out.
Yeah, you got to get in early if you want to get some of those, because those things. I think last year it was like a life-size Slimer. Those are the ones that went quickly.
Oh yeah.
Oh God. Oh, now I didn't see anything like that. They of course had Ghostbuster costumes, and they had no, but they didn't have Slimer really. And then of course they were sold out of like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees masks, and there was one Michael Myers mask. Or well, I think they couldn't say Michael Myers, like they couldn't put his name on the
Mitch
label,
Myers.
You know? Yeah, so it was like a
knockoff.
Yeah, it was like a knockoff.
Oh wow!
I learned why you can't you can't find Michael Myers masks at Spirit, because I think it's possibly like a licensing situation.
Well, they actually did fix that recently. You are correct, but they actually have the Trick or Treat Studios masks. So those were just sold out when you went, because I saw them. They have them. They had them last year, and they did still have a few at My Spirit. And they have I know for a fact they have the Halloween 2 mask. I don't know what other movies they have, but I know for a fact they have a Halloween 2 mask there.
Do they have like the bloody eyes too?
I don't think they have the bloody eyes, or they didn't when I was there. They might have them, but that's not. I only remember specifically seeing the Halloween 2 mask.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
But you can still get the knockoff version.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure they still have Mitch Myers as well.
Yeah. If you're in the DMV area and you happen to be at the Spirit / Christmas Cabaret, you could get Mitch Myers.
Well, they have those like prepackaged ones, and that's a lot of what Spirit used to have. So you're right. Like you'd have like, it would be like Ghost Guy instead of Ghostface. Or like instead of Rick and Morty, instead of seeing Rick, it would be like Crazy Mad Scientist. And then it would be like this whole like bagged costume where it would look like Rick, but it wasn't technically. And like now it seems like they're getting into a little more licensed stuff, just so they can compete with what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Because we have what do you call it? We're a little more picky when it comes to our costumes these days.
Yeah.
Like when you can go and get a great mask from Trick or Treat Studios, like why are you going to go to Spirit? So I think Spirit kind of wisened up to that. It was like, hey, like we need to be able to compete on that level as well.
That they do. But yes, they have. I feel like I'm the only one who seems to like the Purge movies. But they have tons of Purge-inspired masks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And there's like countless different versions you could do.
Yeah. Yeah. Too bad I went to my friend's Halloween party as the Candy Girl #1 from election year. So I can't.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So, but my timing was off. But yeah, I should just buy it anyway. A nice glow-in-the-dark Liberty, like Lady Liberty mask or something, just for shiggles.
There you go, for shiggles.
Yeah, for shiggles.
So
Hashtag
Derek, so your spirit is non-existent, or it hasn't opened yet?
Well, it moved. So it used to be in this one location next to the mall, and then one of those big, I think they call it like urban air, where you can jump around the trampolines and in the pits and everything. So that moved in. So then it moved next to a Best Buy where they used to fix like car stereos and stuff like that. And then now it moved like across the street to next to a Barnes and Noble and Office Max. And so I'm like, oh, sweet. They got the sign up over there. My sisters said, well, the sign's up over there, like should be open, should be great. So earlier today, like before seeing Scary Stories, I drove over there. I can see it's all lit up inside. They've got all the merchandise in. So I'm like feeling all great. I parked the car, got my Goosebumps t-shirt on. I'm like, I got my cool stride going on as I'm walking up to the door. And then I grab the handle and like pull it. And of course it's locked. Like it doesn't do anything. And I try the other door and that's locked. And then I feel so dumb. I have no idea. Like, well, surely this must be a mistake. Like, it looks like it's open. I'm pretty sure I saw people going in there just a second ago. And I looked down at the door and it said store hours. And then there's a little whiteboard. And on that, it said coming soon.
Oh,
so
no.
I'm thinking, what? So I'm like, so then I took a closer look and I realized that the people in the store were workers and they were like in the back setting stuff up. But it looked like the whole thing was ready to go. Like they could have been selling stuff. Like, all the merchandise was out as far as I could see. Like they had most of their setups done. I saw, well, at that point I was just like this kid who was locked out of his house and I just had my head against the window and I was like trying to see what they had before they opened. So I saw like trick or treat costumes, but no life-size Sams like in sight. I saw like Billy the zombie from Hocus Pocus. They had lawn ornaments of his head. So I thought that was really cool.
That is cool.
I saw there were Stranger Things costumes with like the Eggo waffle accessory, which is pretty funny. And a little like animatronic setups, like a doghouse and this like Fisherman's Wharf arrangement that I think they're still setting up. So they definitely were like, I guess still working on it, but it looked so ready. And then I saw like two walls were almost dedicated to Fortnite. So I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty popular. I suppose that's what the big costumes are for kids right now, with as popular as that is. But yeah, so it was just super disappointing to not be able to go in there though. And I was all ready to go and I was so excited and I just felt like I was shut out in the cold. And I just was like a dog just whining to get in and nobody let me in. So what can you do? So at least I got to kind of scope it out a little bit, but there was not like there was no date on the window of like when they are going to open. So I really don't know. And now I really want to be like one of the first people in there because some of the stuff you've been talking about, it's probably still in there. So I might have a shot at getting it.
If you go to the website, they show the opening dates. At least they did for they gave me like a 50-mile radius. So it was like opening, whatever. We'll just say like September 1st for these locations. So it might have a date.
Okay. Well, I will have to look that up though. It just sounds like it gets better every year. And I really liked it last year. And Halloween is being celebrated earlier and earlier, which I like. Apparently Christmas is doing the same thing, which I don't necessarily like. I know
Sorry, Tamika.
The Hallmark Channel will start showing Christmas movies like on Halloween night now.
Oh, they did Christmas in July. You're missing out, Derek.
I did see some of that. Don't worry,
I shouldn't know that, but my parents sometimes have Hallmark Channel on. And I stop by and I'm like, Christmas in July? What? It's not bad to have a little soft spot for the Hallmark Channel every now and then, but I wish they'd do more Halloween movies. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bittersweet experience. So I guess the one good thing is like because I thought I was late to the party. Like this place had been open for a week and it was going to be all scoped out and people would bought all the stuff that I really wanted. So now I feel a little optimistic about maybe I can get in there. So I'm definitely gonna have to check out when they open, because I want to be like day after Thanksgiving shoppers, just mauling the store and just really going for it.
Yeah. We also have maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks until some of the haunted attractions start opening. So I know Halloween Horror Nights kicks off, I think around September 8th, September 2nd, somewhere around there.
Yeah, like 6th or somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah, early September.
Yeah, but we get that, and then I'm in Western New York, so we have Fright World, and there's Haunted Catacombs. I guess they're two of the bigger ones in the States. So we always go there. You know what actually is really great too? Maybe I talked about this last year, but Casa Loma in Toronto. That is,
right.
They put on a fantastic haunted attraction. So honestly, if there's one I'm going to make this year, it's that one. So yeah, I just reminded myself, and I got all excited about it.
Yeah,
I got to make sure I make time to get over there. So it's about 2 hours away.
Wow.
Yeah,
and they're all getting ready now too. Like, can you imagine the stat? Like each year, they probably get more and more geared up, the staffing and the volunteers and everything that goes into creating those attractions. Like
it's a what do you call it? A delicate balance, because especially for some of the haunted attractions where they have original houses, it's like you got to be able to like maintain and perfect what you have, and then keep adding to it so that it's still interesting to people who want to come back year in and year out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's one called the Pinehaven Haunted Hayride that's been around for well over a decade. Like we went to it when we were in middle school. Like our church would take us there as like our youth group bonding night to go out and get scared on like after reading some Bible passages. So that was always fun. But yeah, we would do that. And so we'd been familiar with it, but they totally revamped everything like within the last 5 years, and especially the last couple of years. So we're looking forward to going back there and taking some friends who haven't been there in a while. So I'm really excited about that. And I mean, they had like chainsaws on zip lines and a chainsaw maze with strobe lights. It just really like amps it up, and they'll play like Rob Zombie music videos on this drive-in screen as you wait to get on the hayride. So it's really
That's fun.
Yeah, and the hayride makes multiple stops. So you're on the hayride, but then you have to get on foot and walk through these different, like the haunted hotel area and the haunted farmhouse area. So you're stationary during some parts, and then you also have to like get out and walk through these mazes. So it's a really cool mix.
Yeah, LA's got a haunted hayride that operates in a similar way. And I had a lot of fun doing that. I did it once with Heather and Brian. It was a great time. Tamika, what about you? Do you have any favorite local haunts?
Not that I've been to in a while, but I was on vacation recently and I did an escape room. It was called like Escape from Voodoo Island or something. And
that sounds cool.
Nice. Yeah.
And I was so proud of myself. I was just picking up clues left and right, from like, there's like a radio, like we got trapped in this like cabin, not really a cabin. It's more like I hope it's okay to use the word hut, but it was like, kind of like a flimsy hut. And, there's like a radio, like one of those like old school radios with like, the knobs. And I, for some reason, just thought, what if the radio station this is stuck on is a clue or a combination or something? And I just started trying to pick the combination locks that I could find in the room, and I got one of them to open, and I was just like so proud of myself. And all the other people in the room were very proud of me. It was very cool. It was scary though, because every once in a while, the room we're in would shake. And
oh, nice.
Then we find out from this, because there's like a little TV screen in the room, and I'm sure like the people who operate the escape room like type in little, I guess, clues or something if they sense that maybe you need a hint or you're getting kind of stuck. And so they told us that there's this like entity or something trying to like get into the space. And so the room just started shaking, and it was a really, really cool experience. And if it didn't cost as much as it did, I would have absolutely like convinced some of the other people I was on vacation with to do it. Because I spoilers, we didn't make it. We didn't escape from the island.
I'm talking to a corpse.
Yes.
Plot twist.
Yeah, it's also very fitting given the podcast name.
Very, very
True. We're all dead on the inside.
Where is this escape room?
I was possessed. I got possessed. It's I believe it's pronounced Massanutten, Virginia.
Okay.
So
Nice.
it's near, I believe, Blue Ridge Mountains. So it's like northern Virginia. But yeah, it was awesome. I'm disappointed that we all got possessed by this demon lady. But it was okay. It was a good experience.
Yeah, there's so many good escape rooms, and that's a good point. You know, even when there's not haunted attractions running these days, you can always find a good escape room.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been getting into those too, and those are so much fun. And I'd love to do some of the horror themed ones. Like I know Saw has one in Las Vegas.
Yeah, we did that one. It's
nice.
really good. Yeah, there's not even a sign. There's no sign. You're just
that's perfect.
supposed to know where to go.
And there's a really cool like multimedia Fear the Walking Dead experience that's got some escape room elements to it. So with some really good actors too. So I love when they like incorporate actors in those scenarios too, and it just adds that realism. Like, it almost makes you think, is this really happening? But and just having the element of like, oh crap, we got to figure this out before we all die.
Yeah, Saw escape room's great. So if you're in the Vegas area, take a vacation to Vegas, go do that one. Yeah, that's good.
Were you forced to like, not forced obviously, but like, was it kind of
encouraged?
Like okay, yeah. Were you, like many of the characters in the Saw films, encouraged to like, I don't know, like make some tough choices, like?
Yeah, Tamika, you haven't seen me in a little bit. Like, I'm missing an arm. Christy's missing a foot. Like, it was bad. We almost didn't survive.
No.
But no, they do actually put you in some interesting situations, and like if you're claustrophobic, it might be a problem. They do have you like there's ones where you gotta like put your hands in like into like a glass case, and there's like needles you got to interact with. There is a like an incinerator like for cremation that one person has to go inside. So it's like, it depends how brave you want to be. You can either like be an active participant and like really get into it, or you can just kind of assist. And there's just different types of like components to getting out of the room.
It sounds a lot like Saw 2. Like just with some of the traps, and then maybe that's fitting because you're with more people like in that movie. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Nice.
But I think we should save some of our other Halloween discussion, as much as I hate to cut it. Save some of our Halloween discussion for September and October. We'll have plenty of great things coming up. We'll have to try to do, I don't know how the timing works. I'm going to look for our Halloween hangover episode. Last year, it worked perfectly because it was the day after.
It will work. Let me tell you, it's going to work perfectly this year because Halloween is on a Thursday. So that means our new episode's dropping on November 1st.
Yeah, but that means we'd have to record.
Oh, so it'd be a real
Halloween
hangover episode.
We'll see
maybe
how,
not then.
We'll see how I feel. You know what though? Usually we do. Usually our party's the weekend. Well, it's the weekend, so we'll see what we're doing. But anyway, we have a lot of cool Halloween content coming up, so I'm excited for that. we're going to close out this episode of Corpse Club. I want to thank Brian, our amazing engineer, for helping us out every episode. And as always, we want to thank our listeners, including those of you who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com to learn more about our membership plans. It includes a plan for a t-shirt, pin. You can pick an episode topic. So again, head to corpseclub.com to find out more. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Every review really helps. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime at contact@corpseclub.com. We're also on Twitter at Daily Dead News or at Corpse Club. And if you go to Instagram or Facebook, we're under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, stay scary.